Hi everyone, welcome.
Amazing.
While we're waiting, we're gonna test out a poll anywhere, everywhere option. So I'm gonna pop the chat, the instructions in the chat too, but you should be able to see them on the screen right now. As we designed this workshop, we were talking about all the different ways that you can engage your students. So this is just one option for them.
And if you're like me, you can't follow 2 steps. So I didn't text in my message. I went to the link. So probably you guys don't have that problem. Claire, are you ready for the big blizzard?
I hope so. I was saying to Beck yesterday that we went and gathered firewood and food and all the things.
Yeah.
I'm also pretty sure that we're going to get like 2 inches of snow and it's going to be a massive disappointment, but I hope that I'm wrong. I'm actually really excited for it. I feel like we're long overdue a decent snow. So
yeah.
For those of you not in the Boulder area, they're calling for a snowmageddon with up to 3 feet of snow to fall. So everyone's
this
kind
weekend,
of running around
like,
preparing, but there is definitely uncertainty in the forecast, so it could go in any direction.
Okay, well, it's supposed to be 80 here today and tomorrow.
Oh,
wow. My mom lives up in Red Feather, which is 2 hours kind of north.
Oh yeah, she does.
West of the Boulder area, and they have been told they may get up to 81 inches of snow, which
6 feet or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Or more than that, isn't it? 7.
That was what I was saying right across the Front Range just a couple of days ago. I don't know what happens when you get 5 feet of snow. Does it start to collapse roofs?
Yeah, originally the forecast was, the one I heard first was hilarious. It was somewhere between 4 inches and 8 feet.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, well, Antoinette, we'll try and send some snow your way. A little bit, not too much.
We're in a drought. We would welcome all the snow.
Well, should we get
started? It is lovely to see everybody. For those of you who are just coming in, up on the screen, I hope you can see how to join our poll everywhere. Where are you dreaming of visiting when COVID-19 ends? We'll just give a couple more minutes for people to join and then we'll show that and start our workshop.
So Beck, do you have an account on Poll Everywhere and does it cost money? I
have a free account on Poll Anywhere, which limits how many answers you can have to your poll. But you can also sign up for just a short period of time if you just want to use it for one event that'll extend that.
Okay.
It's lovely to see everybody joining us.
Yeah, welcome everybody.
All right, I am going to show the responses here on the screen. I hope. Oh, look, how many of us want to visit our families?
Yeah, it sure is a bigger blob.
Yep.
Botswana.
Mexico, New Zealand, Australia.
Okavango. Warm
places, beaches, snorkeling. I will hold this open if anyone still wants to keep texting. We'll bring it back up at the end. Thank you for joining us. Today's workshop, we are planning on using a number of different tools that you can use to engage your audience. And I am realizing that I have way too many windows open. So today we are going to talk about REU cohort building. We've got some amazing speakers here, Bridget and Mary and Claire, who I will introduce in a second. But I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about why we should do cohort building. Many cases we think that cohorts happen automatically, especially in person. But the reality is that a little bit of intention, especially at the beginning of your program, can help you a lot. So you can use the cohort building activities at the start of your program and throughout to help set expectations and the tone of your program. So it's a really great way of modeling inclusion and modeling the type of responses that people get that will help create a sense of belonging. One of the biggest parts of a sense of belonging is making friends, having friends in an organization. And we all know that that's a really important part of an REU. And these friends become your professional network in many cases. Using them as a tool to enhance communication and reduce conflict can really help you out throughout the whole summer. And it develops the leadership and empowers your students to support each other. And for us as program managers, the more that the students are able to step in and support each other, the better and more smoothly this summer will go. It's common for me to have students call me from grad school a couple of weeks in and say, it's just so hard to meet everyone. I don't understand why we can't make friends the way we do in an REU. And I've said to many of them, you know, that cohort building is intentional. If we put some effort into it at the beginning and you make friends, then the rest of things go smoothly. So I always encourage them to step up into that role themselves. But for us as REU leaders, I think we know very well how to build our cohorts. And with that little effort, they become a really key part of an REU's success. We do also know that it's much more challenging in the virtual space. And we're lucky to have three amazing speakers today who are going to both talk about their experiences and share some of their activities with us from the virtual space. So we're going to have Bridget Smith-Konter, who's at the Earth Science and Volcanic Islands REU at the University of Hawaii. Mary Liesegang from the Scripps Institute of Oceanography at UCSD, and Claire Raftery, who's the Boulder Solar Alliance REU program at the National Solar Observatory and CU Boulder. Have we got Bridget here right now? I can't see her, no. So we might start off with Mary, if that's okay with you, Mary.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, let me share my screen. All right, confirm you guys can all see that?
Yep.
Do you see it in
presenter view? There you go.
Awesome. All right, so like Beck said, I'm Mary. I ran as program director the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, REU, last summer. Because we are an oceanographic institute, my colloquial title was the cruise director. And so we had 21 students from all over the world. We had students from the US, we had students from Puerto Rico, from Guam. We had students waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to join our REU. And this was our group of students all in their swag that we sent them. And one thing that was really cool about these groups of students is I think most of them walked away saying, I feel closer to the cohort than I would have if I was in person, which I didn't think was possible. I thought that was a really weird thing to think about. And then in starting grad school at Scripps, I feel closer to my cohort, my graduate cohort, than I think I would if I was in person. So I think there's something cool about breaking down the walls of Zoom. We're all kind of in each other's bedrooms. We're all in each other's like space. We're seeing each other's pets in the background. And so there's a lot of opportunities, I think, that we miss in person that we can really take advantage of over Zoom. So to go through just quickly some things that worked for us. So my role was really to be a liaison between the NSF, between the mentors at the program, between the staff at the program, and between the students. So I serve not only as a mentor to them in science, but also just as someone they could reach out to, one of their peers, someone that was close to them in age, that had been through REUs and was close with the staff, to kind of work as an in-between between the two. And so some of the things that we did, we had weekly Friday night game nights. So every Friday night after hours, we would say, hop on Zoom starting at 5 p.m. I usually ended up going to bed around midnight, and they would still go till 2 or 3 in the morning. So the students absolutely loved that. We played Jackbox TV games and different online free games. And they had a ball. They every single week, it was the highlight of their week. And they were like, the mentors need to come, and the mentors would come and they would laugh. So that really created a cohort and a bond beyond just being professional in science. And then I had weekly one-on-one meetings with each of them. These were as short as 10 minutes sometimes and as long as an hour sometimes, where I just checked in. How are you feeling with the program? How are you feeling about the science? Is there any questions that you have? How's your mentor relationship working out? How are you doing as a human being? And really taking beyond just being students or just being interns and looking at them being human beings as well, especially with everything that was going on last summer with the pandemic and social justice movements and whatnot. I think that was really helpful as a place to just kind of have those conversations. And then in our program scheduling, we had Mary time every week. We tried to think of a better name for it. No one ended up coming up with them. But essentially, this was just a time to build our cohort, kind of like the game nights, but in a more intentional way with everyone being there. We had some really great conversations about race. We had conversations about everyone's comfortability with the pandemic. We had conversations. One of our students is like an amazing chef, and he taught us how to cook something one time. So creating like a space within the science to become colleagues and friends, I think really helped. We also always had the Zoom on after hours. So people would just put in our Slack channel, hey, I'm hopping on Zoom to work on data collection, and people would just hop on and work. And I think it not only helped them in building the cohort, but we did a lot of identification, which can be very difficult to learn in a short amount of time. And so if you were on Zoom working with other people, you could say, hey, like, what do you guys think this is or whatnot? And I think that also helped their educational understanding of things. And then we had an active Slack channel, and they had a private student group me that they would send memes in and do all sorts of stuff. So I think a combination of all these things and creating a space. Our goal was to create the lab environment virtually. So when you're sitting in a lab, you stop to eat lunch and you're looking over, oh, what are you having for lunch today? What have you been watching on Netflix recently? You're creating that space. And so we really wanted to foster that environment even on Zoom. So we would take, 30-minute lunch breaks, but we'd say, we're going to leave the Zoom on, like, feel free to leave, feel free to stay. And different staff members would stay or talk. And those conversations, I think, were more fruitful a lot of times than the conversations in lectures or instructional periods that those can with your colleagues. So they've continued to reach out, continue to talk to each other. They text me and they're like, oh, so-and-so got into this grad school, and oh, so-and-so read my personal statement or my application for this or that. And so it's been really cool to watch them grow, and they still are having like game nights. It's now March, and they're still having game nights from the past summer. And I'm like, okay, I'm not your boss anymore. Like I'm going to spend my Friday nights. But I think those are all things that helped. So a quick activity that we can do. So one of my favorite activities, I didn't plan today because it works really well if you know the people really well. So I'll share that. But one of my favorite activities is we would do meme making competitions. And so I would download some random pictures from the internet or funny pictures of our staff or pictures, of our staff in the field from years and years and years ago. And we would send them to breakout rooms and say, okay, go make a meme of this. And then they would come back and someone would be our designated judge, and they would, all laugh. And there were so many memes that came out of it that were making fun of the staff, making fun of other students. And it just created, again, that space to be able to connect on a personal level rather than just strictly on a scientific level. So that's one of my favorites. But today we're going to do high-low Buffalo Hero. So this is kind of like if you've heard of high-lows, if you've heard of rosebud thorn, similar to those. I really like it because I think it creates a space to have conversations that aren't just like yes or no type things. And we would do this every week during Mary time. And so highs, obviously the best part of your week. Lows is like the bummer of your week or the low or the hard part of your week. And then buffalo, I'm sorry if anyone studies buffaloes, but when I think of buffaloes, they're random and funny. And so buffalo is something random, a funny story. I think especially what I found virtually is we all, when we're sitting in lab, we're saying, oh, hey, guess what happened to me this weekend? But we don't really have that opportunity when you're having a structured program virtually. And so this creates a space to just share something funny and connect with people on a human level. And then hero, this one's one of my favorite parts. So we did it that you had to pick a hero within our group. So whether it be a student, a mentor, a staff member, someone at the NSF, someone that you want to shout out for helping you that year, helping you that week, helping you with something. And so that kind of helped us, again, connect with other people and build that confidence with people. So if you want to throw some breakout rooms of maybe 5 people, so we'll go through high, low, buffalo, hero.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm jumping in here late. I had a little flooding problem and some torrential downpours. Everybody see my screen okay? Yep. Okay. Okay. So I'm Bridget. I'm from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I run the ESVI REU. ESVI stands for Earth Science on Volcanic Islands. And just to preface with a little bit of motivation for why we should take cohort building seriously, I thought I'd start with the emphasis on that. Most of our REUs have this common goal to build retention, maybe to help our students stay within STEM, perhaps geosciences, and build a career on that. But I think cohort building can be a way that we can build retention through a sense of place. And by a sense of place, I mean people place. So the little graphic with the student climbing the career ladder there. I like to think of cohort building as this really essential piece of, maybe it's the next bar in the ladder that allows students to take that next jump with confidence. And the confidence comes from the relationships and the friendships that they build throughout this program and then for the rest of their lives. And I have some experience with this beyond my own REU, and that is my sense of place a very long time ago. This is a little embarrassing, but if you look at the bottom corner of that graphic there, that image, it says 1999. And if you remember those days when we used to take pictures with timestamps, this was my REU program when I was an undergrad. And I showed this picture because this has so many meanings to me, but I still have friendships out of these students today. I actually went to graduate school later on with 2 of these students. I had 2 of them in my wedding. I spent an hour yesterday on a Zoom call planning a proposal with one of these students. And I even have 3 of these students here that helped me recruit for this year's REU. And I was able to successfully place 2 of those 3 students in our cohort this year. So these are lifelong relationships that you can expect your students to build, and they start with you this summer or next summer or whatever it might be. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking of creative ways to connect these students. I'm going to go through really quickly this list, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of more time on the second to last one, which is haiku introductions. But I want to put a shout out there to the idea of, if you can get students together in person this year, if you're lucky enough to do so, take them camping, get them outside together for more than a day. That is the best way to build a cohort, and it's experience that the students will remember for a really long time. So I'm going to start with the first one here, that's cohort bios. This is an activity that I have my students do before the REU begins. I request that they put together a 1-page biography. It can be a paragraph or it can be a page, but no longer than a page. I stress that it should be informal and it can have some fun facts, some life stories, whatever they want. 2 examples are shown here, one from a student from last year and another one that I share with them every year. I collect these documents and then I put them in one large group document. And then I share with the group and the mentors. And then if we have guest speakers that want to know more about the students before they arrive, I will share that with them. But this isn't really a public thing. This is just a private, semi-private group distribution that we do. And it's a really nice way to put the pieces together before everyone gets together. I also have students do what we call This Is Me video, which is an activity we do during the REU early on though, so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. This is a 2 to 3 minute video the students put together. It's pre-recorded. They can use any tool or platform they want to do it. I'm going to share with you a couple of seconds of two of these. I'll start with this one from Deanna.
Howdy, my name is Deanna Flores, a senior geology major from Katy, Texas, but more importantly, I am the loudest and the proudest member of the Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2021. A whoop! Thought I'd do the traditional Aggie intro. I am the second of 5 kids, and when at college, I practically live in the Cohort-building, attending class, hanging out and studying in the student lounge, and working on undergraduate research.
Okay, so that one goes on for a bit. I'll just give you a quick snippet of Joe Bell.
Hello, my name is Joel Jomet Villafañez Pagan. I'm from Ciales, Puerto Rico, and I'm doing a geology major at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. Even though I'm doing a geology major, I'm interested in hydrogeology for graduate studies, mainly because I'm interested in studying the relation and interactions of atmospheric events and geologic environments with surface and groundwater. Besides my academic interest.
Okay, so you can kind of get a sense these students were really creative, and I'm showing you two of the better ones, but they put background music. They just knew what to do. I didn't really give them any directions, and it was a really fun little experience that we had early on in REU to put us all together. A couple of words here just about getting some alumni together. I call this our alumni Ohana Paina. Those are Hawaiian words for family and gathering. And we like to think of our REU as one big family, and the students really like to interact with the former students. And so this is just like an hour-long conversation where we have online students share experiences, lessons learned, opportunities they've had since the REU, pathways they've taken, etc. And we do a movie club, which is really much easier to do in person, but you can do this via the virtual space. Last year we did this asynchronously where we had a movie of the week, and then I tried to connect students with that movie through various channels, and then we had a space on Slack where students could comment and share funny quotes or humor or whatever they wanted to. But you can also do this in a synchronous manner. You can have a live watch party or a virtual movie night with the live chat's always great so students can interact. I encourage you to Google watch party or live movie night because there's lots of different ways to do this and some creative ways as well. So I won't take up the time talking about that too much. I promised I'd show some geo memes. This is also something that we supported on the Slack channel. We had a space where students could post their favorite geo memes throughout the summer. And so some of them are shown here. One of our students commented, "I have finally found my people," after sharing lots of great humor with each other. So this is just a really casual and fun way for students to share some background and humor. And then just as promised, a little bit about haikus. So I got this idea by listening to my then 4th grade son learn about haikus from his online Zoom class. Students were introducing each other via haiku, and I thought, well, that's a great way to do something to do for my own REU. So here we are. A haiku is a 17-syllable poem. It has 3 lines. The first one is 5 syllables, the second one is 7, and the third one is 5. And sometimes they're about nature, but in the sense you can have them be about anything. An example shown here, photosynthesis provides all the great tasting flavors of sunshine. You can get more modern and relevant and include some as motivation for your students for social distancing. This one is, on TV today, I saw 2 strangers shake hands. I too use Purell. Another one, your face frozen on my screen. These days we all have limited bandwidth. And this is my personal favorite. Kids are home from school all day long. They talk and fight. I am going nuts. And then I made one for my own colleague who is co-director of my REU program. This is for Paul. He is a Aloha State Games champion at table tennis. And so my haiku example I shared with the students was Paul from UHM, champion table tennis, professor and friend. So what I set out students to do is I give them a slide like this after showing them, reminding them what a haiku is. I tell them their job is to prepare a haiku about a fellow REU student. I ask them then to partner up, and I send them out to breakout rooms to get a couple minutes to talk, and then they can do it offline as well. I tell them to be creative and have a visual for their haiku and be prepared to present it the next week. And so then we all come back and this is what our ensemble REU haikus look like. Turned out to be a really nice collage. Just to share a couple down here, this one of a pumpkin and water for Andrea. Hailing from Cali, born of the land of pumpkins, water now guides her. We met Deanna earlier, artist and reader, scholar of geology, math problem solver. And one of my favorites is this one from Jake, student of guitar, disciple of the ocean, seeker of challenge. So you can think of a lot of different ways that you can share these with each other and have them to hang on to for a while, but that was how we put it all together. So I think we have a couple minutes. I was hoping that we could put some of us into breakout rooms, small groups, maybe 4 or 5, and select the haiku-e, so a person that will volunteer to be the person who the haiku is about, and then that person will share a couple of details, a few facts about themselves, and then together the group can whip up 17 syllables and you're done. And sometimes people are great at these and other times people struggle. So we'll see. Val's putting us all into breakout rooms. We'll have you back to share on the other side. So
Sharing experiences with us.
Very good. Make sure I can actually do it properly today. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I am here representing the Boulder Solar Alliance REU program. It's a program led by LASP, a laboratory for atmospheric and space physics out of CU Boulder, but it's a partnership of 8 different institutions around the city of Boulder, all focusing on solar and space physics. So previously, many of you will know Marty Snow over here, who's run the program for many years. Marty is leaving us this year and is moving to South Africa, of all places. So we have kind of a new group of coordinators that are stepping in. So Wendy and Amy are going to be the lead coordinators. Yun Chen helped out last year, and we're hoping we'll do so this year as well. Willow is joining us this summer as well. She's sort of our student coordinator, and I'm from the National Solar Observatory. So I'm one of the partner institutions involved in the program. Okay, so this was our cohort last year, and I just wanted to show this because, you know, I like looking at all their lovely faces. But one of the things that the students mentioned to me that they made them really sad was the fact that they didn't have any kind of mementos from the program. So I put this together. I got them to send me photographs of themselves outside. I tried to ask for sort of regular backgrounds and lighting. Nobody followed those instructions very well. So it was a fun Photoshop journey to get everybody looking like they somewhat resembled each other and being in the same place. But the students really loved this and they really appreciated it. And there is an Easter egg in here where one of these students is wearing somebody else's shoes. So if you can find that person, you'll get bragging rights for a long time. Of course, that's not what we actually looked like. This is what we really looked like all summer long. We have quite a large cohort. We had 27 students last year. And so trying to build a cohort was somewhat challenging because it's easy to lose people when you have a group that big. You end up having multiple smaller groups and cliques. And so we tried to be very intentional about how we went about our cohort development and activities. And last year was a bit of an experiment. It was sort of focused on adapting what we had done for in-person classes or in-person experiences. This year, I think we're going to be much more intentional about creating experiences specifically in a virtual environment, which really are quite different to an in-person experience. So mainly today, I'm going to talk you through some of our the evaluative feedback that we got from our students through our external evaluator, and talk about some of the practices, the programs that we did in order to try and do some of that cohort building. So the first thing I wanted to say is to make full use of your platform. So within Zoom, for example, we use Zoom for hosting our sessions, but there are many different ways to, for example, have your screen visible while you're in screen sharing mode, because part of the issue is if you're sharing slides, you can't see people's faces, especially if they're in the little tiny bubble up here. So I really like this side-by-side mode. You can make it so that the screen share bit is really small, or you can have the people be shrunk down. You can also have it be speaker view where you just see one person's face. Zoom has lots of capabilities, and many of the other platforms also have similar levels of capabilities. So I think just make as much use of them as you can. It's worth spending an hour exploring Zoom and exploring the tutorials and so on that they have if you haven't already done that. And ask your students for input. What do they like to use? What sort of resources have they made use of during it? Because they've done this for a year now, and so their schools will have likely used different kinds of tools, and we can make good use of that as well. Okay, so the first activity that we sort of trialed, we called it Coffee Roulette. This was a hat tip to one of my colleagues who came in to do some mentor training for mentors, specifically around the idea of a remote internship and remote mentoring. How do you build trust in a virtual environment and so on? And she recommended this activity to us, and it worked. I think it worked pretty well. So very similar to what we just did. You're randomly assigned into breakout rooms in pairs to chat for a few minutes before a professional development or after some kind of session, you know, just whatever the whenever you have everybody together. And so we did these pretty heavily in the first few weeks, and then we sort of stopped them because we sort of anticipated the students would be getting to know each other separately. Turns out that was a mistake, and really we should have kept them going through the summer. And the other big lesson that we've taken away is that we should give them something to talk about. So this is a great opportunity for reflection. I love the activity that Mary just did. I think would be a perfect alignment with this, where you give them the high-low buffalo hero to talk about every week. And because you're talking with somebody different, because you're randomly assigned to these breakout rooms, it's an opportunity to sort of get to know them a little bit more and dig into this. And really it's a time to just be vulnerable with each other and trying to build some of that trust. Some of the feedback we got straight from the students, I'd wish there'd been more forced socializing, and it was hard to connect with others at first because we wouldn't see each other outside of professional development sessions. So I had this first comment in many different ways from many different students in the summative feedback. Unfortunately, they didn't necessarily tell us this in our weekly feedback, but at the end of the summer, this was definitely one of the biggest takeaways, is that trying to get them to socialize casually together without impetus is really just not going, for our group, it didn't happen quite as organically as we had hoped it would. And then a shout out to Val. This came up yesterday when we were doing the practice for this. She pointed me to this New York Times article, which has the 36 questions that lead to love. I'd like to think of it as the 36 questions that lead to a strong cohort. And actually it's 20 questions if you take out all of the potentially triggering questions. So I actually have these in, here we go. I have the links for these that I'll put in the chat so you can look at them yourself. So there's both the original New York Times article and the adapted version. Now I went through this very quickly yesterday, so I probably could do with a sharper eye, but giving the students questions like this just as like talking points to start the conversation, I think could be really valuable. Okay, our next activity that we tried was, we call it virtual roommates. So when we have the students in person, they are normally living in apartments of 4. And so organically, just by virtue of physical distance, they start to hang out with these group of 4 first, and then as they get to know the rest of the cohort, their friendship circles grow and change and evolve. But trying to kickstart that, you know, here's this intensive group of people that you're going to spend some significant time with early in the day, we created virtual roommate groups. Where we assigned the students into these groups, and we asked them to meet once a week, thinking that it would be a sort of peer support for each other and really just an opportunity to chat. And it came out of some of the very early few days of the virtual program. It was clear that there was a small handful of students who were just not going to engage in the larger groups. They just wouldn't speak up, they wouldn't participate, they were very, very shy. And we thought that having the opportunity for them to engage in smaller groups might help bring them out of their shell and give them some more confidence. And so it worked really, really well for some of the groups, and then it fell flat for some of the others. We had a few groups who, you know, they bonded really well and they're still friends and they still hang out even today, even though the program has been done for almost a year. And then we had other groups where some students really wanted it to work, but the other half of the group weren't interested, and so it never really took off. So the lessons that we've taken away is that there needs to be some kind of accountability. So giving them an obligation, some homework, something to talk about, some outcome that if they don't do it during the week, it will be noticed, so they can really just justify forcing the group to get together. And it's kind of a balancing act between too much forced interaction and then taking away from their research time, and then also not encouraging it strongly enough, and then they just never get to it and they miss out on that, which is, I mean, that's a constant balancing act. Beck had a great idea yesterday as far as the homework idea for this is concerned, is give each group responsibility for that week's social activity. And so it just rotates through the whole cohort, and every week some other group is responsible for organizing something for everybody, and then that will help to encourage them to get together. So the written feedback, because we weren't ever made to interact, my roommates didn't end up talking to each other. So that's really what we wanted to mitigate with having these kind of more structured ways of doing this. This was an activity that we did in the second week. It's called Every Picture Tells a Story. Basically, everybody in the group submits a photograph or a picture of something that's meaningful to them. And we encouraged our mentors to do this as well and to come to this professional development session. And we put them together into a slide and went through the slideshow as a whole group, and everybody was guessing who owned which photograph, and then the person who owned it would sort of own up and then speak about it and talk about how what the picture meant to them. Initially when we did it, it went well. We had some good responses. But the thing that really surprised me was in our final evaluation, a lot of students said that was one of their favorite things that they'd done, and that they wished we'd done it more. And so this is another one of those times when what you hear and what the students are feeling are not always in line. And so I guess this is a shout out for regular touching base regularly with them and getting their feedback as much as possible. We did this. We had a weekly evaluation for them, and we also had face-to-face meetings with them as well, and still not all of that information came through to us. So more activities like the Every Picture Tells a Story in the beginning of the program makes us hang out more, or making us hang out more on Zoom without advisors, which was in response to what could we do better to build a cohort. And then this is a sort of a no-brainer, is giving them group project work. In an in-person program, we would have them doing a hardware project together in small groups during our first week, our boot camp week, where it's basically like a summer school. And it's a valuable time for them to get to know each other and kind of jump in and learn about teamwork and collaboration and compromise and so on. And we wanted to maintain this. So instead of doing a hardware project, which is what we'd normally do, we adapted some lessons from the Heliophysics Graduate Summer School. So shout out to Nick Gross for supporting this. And they're software focused lab projects. So it's a lot of data handling and so on. And so it allowed them to get their hands dirty and to really jump in with that. So we would have a workshop on a topic of a lecture that they had just been through. So it also allowed them to process the content that they had just heard through the lecture as well. And so this was a great example of the benefit of small groups, and especially task-oriented small groups. And we'll be trying to incorporate this more into more of our programming this year, and not only in sort of academic ways. I think it would be a great way to adapt this for more fun projects, perhaps some scavenger hunts or some, to try and gamify it in some way. I think that's another way that you could adapt this, but giving the students something to do in the small groups, I think, is really important, and we've seen that throughout all of our experiences. So related to this week one projects, the feedback was that it allowed me to have a crash course in the field and bond with my group mates, and it was fun to work with other students and learn together. So these are more quotes from our students. I have the link to my slides here that I will put in the chat window, and feel free to download them and read through them yourself. We don't really have time. I recognize we only have 1 minute left. But there's some big lessons that could be learned that we learned the hard way last year that I'm hoping that we can share with everybody else, that you can try and adapt for your program this year. And I think this is it. We're not going to have time to actually do the icebreaker practice, but that's okay. It was sort of a small one anyway, compared to the other two great ones that we did today. So is that okay with you, Beck and Val, that we don't do that, or do you want me to show it real quick anyway?
How about for anybody who has quick questions, we'll do that now. And then for anybody who would like to stay and see your icebreaker, we can do that too.
Okay, sounds good.
We know it is the top of the hour. If you need to pop away, that's fine. I'm also going to throw a link in the chat for a Jamboard where you can share your thoughts about this community for any of you who may not have explored that before. Jamboard I found is a really kind of cool post-it note board opportunity. Alicia, did I see a hand up?
Yeah, I have a question for Claire. You had mentioned incorporating your mentors into some of these icebreakers and team builders. How did you go about doing that? Did they all come? Were they all enthusiastic about participating?
So we invite our mentors to all of our group activities, all the professional development activities that we do. And we generally have a pretty mixed bag. So we have some who show up every single week without fail and they dive into it wholeheartedly. They're usually on the more junior end and the sort of closer in age to the students. We do sometimes have our senior folks show up as well and wanting to participate. I think that there's a little discomfort in feeling like they're sort of impeding the students' personal time a little bit and trying to figure out where the barriers are there. I think inviting them personally, you know, sending a message to say, hey, we're doing this. It would be wonderful if you could come also. It doesn't help that we have such a large cohort and such a distributed network. So we have mentors at 8 different institutions and not all of them know each other. So there's those kind of barriers that this particular program is dealing with. But if you're at a smaller, or not the smaller institution, but if you're at an institution where all the mentors are together and already know each other, it might be easier to kind of let some of those barriers down. But it just goes to show that it's also valuable for mentors as well, and trying to build those trusting relationships and and learning how to let their guard down a little bit.
Thanks, Claire. If anyone else has questions, feel free to speak up. Claire, would you like to open your map?
Sure. So this was a where did my Zoom go? Here we go. This was an icebreaker that I tried to adapt for this group. We did it last year with our student interns. It was the very first thing that we did, and I think it was great for them because we had students all over the world. We had students in Ireland, we had students in the United Arab Emirates, we had students all over the US. But the first thing is that you want to get them familiar with where the annotate tool is. So if you wanted to participate, then now is a good time to click on view options and find the annotate tool. And the reason we want to do it like this for the program is we encourage, during that first week of the program where there's a lot of introductory lectures, we've encouraged the presenters to stop and ask for participation by the students. And we want them to do that using the annotation tool. And so in this particular activity, you're going to use the stamp tools, the star and the heart in particular. So the activity is very simple. Once you find annotation, you can put a heart where you are right now, and then a star where you go to school, or perhaps where you went to school, or something else. And then if you have folks who aren't within the US, you can put something somewhere not on the map. And so with the actual students, when we're doing this live with them, then we would have them go around and introduce. We're going to break them up into pairs, into breakout rooms, and have them introduce themselves to each other. We find that if we have them going around the room and introducing yourself to the rest of the group, that you're not necessarily concentrating on what everybody else is saying, you're more focused on what you're going to say when it's your time to speak. So by introducing yourself to one other person and then having them introduce you to the group, if they've written down the answers to you, then it means that they can focus on the rest of the answers of the rest of the group. And so we just have them introduce themselves to each other, introduce their partner to each other, and then also mention where they are on the map. So part of the justification for this in particular in this remote environment is if you have students who are in the same place and they don't realize that they're neighbors or they're, you know, a few hours apart, and they may wish to, once it's safe, of course, get together and, you know, spend time in the same physical space as each other, or if they're maybe at school together but they live in different places, then when they return to school they will be able to get to know each other that way. So it's a sort of a very low level, low ask kind of an activity, but it's a good way to get them realizing that they need to engage right from the very beginning. So on here we have Hawaii, we have a few folks in California, we have 2 folks coming from the Bay Area, or maybe that's 1 person in 2 different locations. We have a few folks up in Oregon and Colorado and all over the place. So like I said, it's just an easy kind of introduction, but really the purpose of it is to get them using the annotation tool, so they are familiar with that the rest of the week.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Mary. You are so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's testament when Kama wrote, "Thanks everyone. This makes me feel less sad about being virtual again this summer." That's it says a lot. Great ideas, and I love your slides too, by the way. So we'll be compiling those and sharing them if you're able and willing to do that. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
Happy
Everyone.
planning.